The Pacific night burned like a second sunrise. Captain Aria Vega froze on the command deck of the San Francisco defense grid as the skies split apart. Above the bay, a massive alien warship hung in silence, sleek obsidian, like a blade forged from shadow. For one heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the first strike fell. A column of white fire lanced through the heart of the city. The shock wave rolled across the bay, tearing apart bridges and glass towers like paper. Aria's console erupted with panicked voices. Screams, static, desperate calls for evacuation. Pull all civilians south of Market. Get them underground, now. Aria barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Lieutenant Hayes, his face pale and slick with sweat, stammered, They're not targeting our defenses. They're hitting residential sectors. Then stop talking and move them. Aria snapped. She glanced at the live broadcast screens. Every major network was transmitting the same feed, hijacked by the Zither Dominion. A tall, armored figure with reptilian features stared into the camera, his cold golden eyes radiating contempt. People of Earth, you were warned. You refused the Council's order. Today, 22 million lives will pay for your arrogance. The voice echoed in a chilling, metallic resonance. Behind him, alien soldiers stood motionless, as though this atrocity were routine. The broadcast switched to real-time aerial shots. San Francisco, Mumbai, Lagos, all under simultaneous bombardment. Aria's stomach turned. 22 million. They weren't fighting a war. This was execution. She slammed her palm against the console. All batteries, fire on my mark. Ma'am, they're shields. I said fire. The defensive cannons roared, spitting plasma into the night. The shots splashed harmlessly against the Zither ship's shimmering shield, like rain hitting steel. Aria watched as the warship's second strike lit the waterfront, vaporizing the evacuation docks where civilians had gathered. The screams through the comms cut off midword. Hayes' voice broke. They're just erasing us. Aria forced her jaw tight. We make them bleed, Hayes. We make them regret coming here. Minutes stretched into eternity. Emergency feeds flickered between flames, toppled towers, and streets choked with rubble. Rescue teams shouted over comms. Try to reach trapped survivors. The air smelled of ozone and burning metal. Grid powers failing. Hayes reported. We've lost Sector 5, and civilian shelters are breached. Should we? A shadow fell over the command deck as the warship passed overhead, low enough for its hull to blot out the stars. Its presence was suffocating. Like a predator watching its prey squirm, Aria grabbed the comm. This is Captain Vega to all units. Rally to fallback positions. If we can't stop them here, we buy time. Get as many people out as you can. Static answered. Most units weren't responding anymore. A transmission cut across every screen, overriding local signals. It was the alien commander, the same one who had spoken before, now framed by the burning skyline. His voice filled the air. Humanity's defiance ends tonight. This is your only warning. Submit to the Dominion. Surrender your weapons. Kneel or perish. Aria stared at him, rage boiling like acid in her chest. She stepped forward, locking eyes with the alien image, as if he could feel her glare through the screen. Over my dead body, she muttered. Hayes looked at her, fear mixing with awe. Ma'am, if we keep firing, we'll just... They think fear will break us. It won't, she said, her voice low but unshakable. We're not bowing to anyone. A tremor rocked the command deck as the Zither unleashed their third strike. A blinding flash washed over the city. When the light cleared, half of downtown was gone. Nothing but smoking craters where towers once stood. Hayes whispered, Oh God, 20 million people gone. Aria didn't look at him. She couldn't. If she let herself think about the number, about the families wiped out in seconds, she would crumble. She didn't have the luxury of grief. Not yet. She keyed the emergency channel. All surviving units, regroup at Point Echo 3. We hold the line. Repeat, hold the line. The command deck doors burst open, and Sergeant Imani staggered in, soot streaking her face, her armor scorched. Captain, we've cleared 3,000 civilians from the south sectors, but the bridges are down, she said, coughing. We'll have to ferry them by dropships. Do it, Arya said. I don't care if it takes every ship we've got. Imani's voice dropped. There's nothing left of Sector 9. Arya's hands clenched into fists. She forced herself to stay steady. Then we save who we can. Move! The alien broadcast switched again, this time showing a panoramic shot of the burning Earth from orbit. Their message scrolled across the screen in countless languages. Your resistance is futile. Submit, or the next strike will erase your capital cities. The world was watching. Billions across Earth and the colonies were seeing this massacre unfold live, powerless to stop it. Arya slammed a fist against the console. They think this is over? They have no idea what we are. Hayes looked at her. What are we, ma'am? Arya turned, eyes like steel. We're the species that survives, no matter what it takes. An explosion rocked the deck as a glancing strike hit the outer defense tower. Smoke poured through the vents. Arya grabbed Hayes by the collar and hauled him toward the exits. Move, Lieutenant. We're falling back. Where to? He asked, coughing. To the only place they're not looking, she said, grim determination in her voice. Hours later, the bombardment stopped. The Zyder warship ascended, leaving the city in ruin. Fires burned across the skyline, and the once bustling streets were nothing but ash and broken glass. Arya stood on a shattered rooftop, staring at the alien ship as it vanished into the stratosphere. Around her, the silence was unbearable. No sirens, no voices, just the wind through a graveyard of steel. She reached for her comm. This is Captain Vega of the UEC. San Francisco defense grid is down. Civilian casualties are catastrophic. Her voice caught, but she forced the words out. We won't forgive. We won't forget. They want us to kneel? We'll rise. The line crackled. No one replied. Arya lowered the comm, her jaw tight. Somewhere beyond the stars, the Zyder were watching, convinced they had broken humanity. She clenched her fists, a single promise burning through the grief. They will pay for every single life. The United Earth Council chamber smelled of smoke. It wasn't the fire or dust of battlefield, but the tension of sleepless leaders crammed into a war room that felt too small for the weight of what had happened. Holographic displays lit the circular hall, showing live feeds of cities that still burned. San Francisco a black scar on the Pacific coast, Mumbai reduced to twisted metal, Lagos a smoking ruin. Captain Arya Vega stood at the far end of the table, armor scorched and her hair tied back in a rough knot. She hadn't slept since the attack, and her voice carried a sharp edge that cut to the low murmur of frightened politicians. 22 million dead, she said. That's not a statistic. That's an entire generation of families gone in a single hour. And you're talking about surrender? Counselor Elena Voss, a tall woman in a pristine white suit, leaned forward. Her perfectly measured tone grated on Arya's nerves. Captain Vega, we've lost 3 major cities and half our defense grid. If we retaliate blindly, we risk losing everything. We don't even know if we can win. Arya's eyes narrowed. If we give in, we don't deserve to win. The room erupted into overlapping voices. Some counselors demanded immediate negotiations with the Zyder Dominion. Others, mostly military officials, shouted for retaliation. Admiral Rourke, a broad-shouldered man with steel-gray hair, slammed his fist against the table. The Dominion thinks we're weak. If we bend now, they'll crush us anyway. The only way forward is to fight. And get every last city glass from orbit? Counselor Voss shot back. Your bravado will get billions killed. Arya stepped between them, her voice rising just enough to silence the argument. We fight smart, not loud. The Zyder fleet has weaknesses. I saw their ground units. Their shields aren't invincible. They underestimated us once. That's the only advantage we have. A hologram of General Karethvok flickered on the center table, recorded from the broadcast of the massacre. His golden eyes stared out with cruel precision. Humanity's resistance will be crushed. Your stubbornness endangers not just your world, but the balance of the galaxy. Arya stared at the projection, memorizing his face. This isn't about balance. It's about control. They want us broken so we can't challenge them. I don't plan to give them that satisfaction. Admiral Rourke crosses arms. What's your plan, Captain? Arya took a breath, her mind already locked on the fragments of intelligence they'd salvaged. Their logistics network is vulnerable. We hit their supply lines, the ones fueling the ships in orbit. We don't take them head-on. We bleed them dry, piece by piece. Counselor Voss scoffed. And how do you propose we do that? Their technology outmatches ours by decades. A few desperate skirmishes won't. Arya cut her off, her voice sharp. Then we stop thinking like them. We don't need superior tech. We need unpredictability. We strike where they don't expect it. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Finally, Admiral Rourke leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in thought. A surgical raid on their forward caches. Risky as hell. You're proposing guerrilla warfare against a fleet that could flatten us in hours. Arya's expression didn't waver. It's either that or die waiting for them to finish the job. Give me a team. We'll make it hurt every time they move against us. Counselor Voss shook her head, muttering, This is insanity. It's survival. Arya shot back. The meeting dragged on for hours, but by the end, a decision was made. Arya had her orders, not officially sanctioned by the entire council, but approved by the only ones willing to act. She was to lead a covert strike against a Zyder supply hub hidden near the Europa colony. In the underground hangar of a UEC military base, Arya's team prepared for departure. The scent of fuel and scorched metal filled the cavernous space. Dropships lined the bay, battered but functional. Lieutenant Hayes was already there, his uniform cleaner, but his face still pale from the previous day's horrors. "Ma'am," he said, falling into step beside her, "we've got 5 volunteers for the mission, all veterans. They know the risks." "They'll need to," Arya replied. Hayes hesitated. Counselor Voss called us suicide runners. Arya stopped and looked at him, her voice steady. "If we do nothing, we're already dead. At least this way, we decide how we go down." Sergeant Imani approached, checking the seals on her combat armor. Her usually calm face was set in grim determination. "We've patched together. What intel we can on Europa? The Zyder are using the colony's ice caverns as staging grounds. We'll need to go in cold and fast." "Good," Arya said. "If they expect us, we've already lost." As the dropship roared to life, Arya stood at the base of the ramp, addressing her team. "The Dominion thinks they've shown us fear. They're wrong. We don't kneel. We don't break. Tonight, we take the first step to make them remember who we are." The soldiers nodded, silent but resolute. The flight to orbit was quiet. Outside the viewport, Earth looked wounded. Great plumes of smoke spiraled into the atmosphere, and the black scars of bombardment glared like open wounds. Arya couldn't look away. Hayes finally broke the silence. "Do you think they're watching us now?" "Laughing." "Let them laugh," Arya said. "Will be the reason they stop." When the dropship reached the edge of orbit, they got their first glimpse of the Zyder fleet. Sleek, predatory silhouettes drifted above the planet, shields glimmering faintly. The sight made Arya's chest tighten, but she forced the fear down. "We're ghosts tonight," she told her team. "Stay sharp. One mistake, and we're done." The pilot's voice crackled over comms. "Approaching jump point. Europa in 5. Arya nodded, gripping the edge of her seat. She thought of the faces she'd seen in the ruins of San Francisco, the ones she couldn't save, the promise she'd made burn like iron in her chest. "They started this," she whispered. "We're going to finish it." The dropship knifed through the silent dark, Europa's pale horizon rising below like a frozen corpse. The ice moon was blanketed in endless sheets of white, reflecting faint light from Jupiter's swirling storms. Arya Vega tightened her harness as the ship shook violently during atmospheric entry. 30 seconds to touchdown, the pilot called. "Landing zone is clear for now." Arya scanned the terrain through the forward viewport. Jagged ice ridges jutted like the teeth of some frozen beast. Somewhere beneath those ridges, the Zyder had built their forward supply hub, shielded from UEC satellites. She turned to her team. "This is a fast in and out. We hit their weapons cache, grab whatever intel we can, and vanish before they call reinforcements. No heroics." "Understood." "Understood," Sergeant Imani replied, checking her pulse rifle. Lieutenant Hayes muttered something under his breath, but when Arya's eyes narrowed on him, he straightened. "No heroics, ma'am," he repeated. The dropship skidded onto the ice, landing gear screeching against the frozen crust. A sharp hiss filled the cabin as the ramp lowered, releasing a gust of biting cold that stung Arya's face even through her helmet. "Go, go, go," she ordered. The squad poured out, their boots crunching on frost, weapons raised. The moon was eerily silent. No wind, no movement, just a low hum of distant machinery buried under the ice. Scanners picking up energy signatures 2 clicks northeast, Imani reported. "That'll be the hub." Arya gestured forward. "Then that's where we're going." They moved in stagger formation, weaving through jagged ice formations. The shadows stretched long across the landscape, illuminated only by the weak light of their helmet lamps. Hayes whispered over comms. "Feels too quiet. Are we sure they don't know we're here?" Arya kept her eyes forward. "We assume they do. That way we're never wrong." By the time they reached the perimeter, they saw it, a dark, metallic structure embedded deep into the ice. The base looked almost organic, its walls curved and glistening with frost, glowing faintly with alien energy veins. Imani crouched beside a ridge, peering through her scope. 2 sentries at the gate. Zyder soldiers, standard rifles. Looks like a patrol route every 2 minutes. Arya tapped her comm. "Hayes, flank left. Take the shot when they cross the shadow line. We don't alert the rest of them if we can help it." Hayes exhaled slowly, bracing his rifle on the icy ground. 2 alien figures emerged, tall, armored, their scaled hides catching the faint light. Hayes squeezed the trigger. A muted crack echoed, and one of the aliens dropped silently. Imani fired a half-second later, dropping the second before it could signal. "Clear," Hayes said, voice tight. Arya signaled the squad forward. "Move. Inside before anyone notices." The entry hatch hissed as they forced it open, warm air spilling out into the cold. The interior was a maze of smooth corridors glowing with pale blue light. The architecture felt alien and clinical, with walls that seemed to pulse faintly like veins beneath skin. Arya raised a hand. "Stay quiet." We split into pairs. Hayes with me. Imani. Take the others to plant charges on the ammo storage. We regroup in 20 minutes. "Copy that," Imani said. Moving through the corridors felt like trespassing in a predator's den. Strange symbols scrawled across the walls shifted faintly as they passed. Arya couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Hayes whispered, "What do you think this place really is?" "Doesn't matter," Arya replied. "Our job is to take it apart." They reached a control room filled with alien consoles humming softly. Arya plugged a data spike into a terminal, watching as streams of alien glyphs flickered across her wrist display. "Can you read any of that?" Hayes asked. "No," Arya said, fingers flying as she copied files. "But our analysts will. Whatever they're planning, I want to know before they fire their next shot." A faint clicking sound echoed down the hallway. Arya froze. "Footsteps," she mouthed. 2 Zyder soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor. Their eyes glowed faintly, predator-like. Arya dove for cover as plasma bolts ripped through the wall beside her. "Contact!" Hayes shouted, firing back. The firefight was quick but brutal. Arya rolled from cover, aiming for the gaps in their armor. 2 precise shots, and 1 alien went down. The second lunged forward, snarling in its guttural tongue, but Hayes hit it with a burst of rifle fire, dropping it mid-stride. Arya wiped frost from her visor. "We're exposed now. Grab what you can. We're leaving." The explosion came before they reached the exit. A deafening roar shook the ground as part of the base erupted in flame. Imani's charges had gone off early. The calm crackled with her voice, urgent and breathless. "We're compromised, Captain. Whole nest is waking up." "Fall back," Arya ordered. "Rendezvous at the dropship." The corridors were chaos. Sirens blared in an alien pitch, harsh and grating. Zyder soldiers flooded the halls, firing with disciplined precision. Arya led Hayes through a side passage, throwing a flash charge to disorient the enemy. They burst out onto the frozen surface just as Imani and the others arrived, sprinting through gunfire. Plasma bolts sizzled against the ice, throwing shards into the air. Move. Cover fire. Arya shouted, unloading her rifle to buy the others time. They dove into the dropship, the hatch sealing just as plasma fire scorched its hull. Get us out of here. Arya barked to the pilot. The engines roared, and the ship shot skyward, leaving the smoldering base below. Through the viewport, Arya saw flames licking through the ice caves. The raid had worked, but at a cost. Casualties? She asked, voice tight. Imani shook her head, her eyes hard. Miller and Torres didn't make it. Arya swallowed hard, forcing down the wave of anger and grief. Then we make it count. What we pull from their system better tell us something. Hayes leaned back in his seat, blood on his sleeve. Do you think this will change anything? Arya looked out at Europa shrinking below. It already has. They wanted fear. Instead, they've given us fire. Hours later, as the dropship re-entered Earth's orbit, Arya stared at the data files they'd stolen. A single phrase, translated by the UEC systems, repeated across the alien plans. Operation Extinguish. Her chest tightened. The Dominion wasn't finished. She turned to her team. This was just the beginning. The war room smelled of cold steel and recycled air. Arya Vega stood in front of the holographic table, the stolen Zyder data rotating in crimson projections. Around her, senior officers and analysts sat rigid, their faces pale in the glow of alien glyphs now translated into stark warnings. Operation Extinguish, Admiral Rourke muttered, leaning forward with clenched fists. This isn't just about Earth. They mean to wipe out every human colony. Mars, Europa, Titan, all of it. Aria's jaw tightened. They're not stopping until humanity is dust. Counselor Voss, present via a shimmering projection, folded her arms. Then we have no choice but to re-enter negotiations. We can't win a war against a fleet of this scale. Arya turned sharply. Negotiations? Did you not see San Francisco? Mumbai? 22 million burn alive. And you want to sit at their table? They don't want peace, Voss. They want us gone. Voss' voice stayed calm, but there was a tremor beneath the polished tone. What do you propose, Captain? Charging headfirst into a fleet that could blot out the sun? We'd lose everything. Arya took a deep breath, pointing at the data files. We got something better than brute force, their supply chain. Europa gave us their deployment patterns, refueling schedules, and even their shield cycle intervals. If we hit them in the right place at the right time, we can cripple their fleet before they even reach Mars. Admiral Rourke studied her with sharp eyes. Where's the weak spot? Arya flicked the hologram, zooming in on a cluster of ships. Here, their forward carrier, the Dominion Fong. It's their linchpin. Destroy it, and the entire fleet scatters. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. Rourke broke the silence. That's suicide. You'd need to punch through 3 layers of escorts just to scratch the Fong shields. Arya's voice was steady. Then we make them chase us. Split their formation, lure the Fong into a trap. An intelligence officer, thin and nervous, cleared his throat. Captain Vega, we've also uncovered something else. The hologram shifted, showing encrypted transmissions between the Zyder Dominion and the Council species. Words appeared on the screen, jagged and cold. Sanction approved. Human resistance to be neutralized. Demonstration strike authorized. The room froze. What is this? Arya demanded. The officer swallowed hard. These are Council communications. The attack wasn't just Dominion aggression. It was sanctioned by the wider Galactic Council. Rourke's face darkened. Those bastards knew. Arya's chest felt like it was caving in. They didn't just allow it. They ordered it. Voss' projection flickered. This is unverified data. Don't lie to me, Arya snapped. They think we're too dangerous, too unpredictable. So they decided to teach us a lesson. A warning shot. 22 million lives as leverage. Rourke slammed his hand on the table. Then there's no peace. We hit them hard enough that the entire galaxy hears us. Voss' expression shifted to fear. Do you understand what you're saying? You'll bring the full wrath of the Council down on us. They've already declared war, Arya said, voice like steel. The only way forward is to survive long enough to make them regret it. Preparations began immediately. In the cavernous hangars of Mars Orbital Station, technicians scrambled like ants, refitting gunships and bombers. Arya walked through the organized chaos with Imani at her side. 3 days until they reached Mars orbit, Imani said, glancing at the tactical board on her wrist. Our stations can't take a full assault. They won't have to, Arya replied. We're hitting them before they hit us. Later, aboard the UEC flagship Resolute Dawn, Arya stood on the bridge, watching Mars rotate beneath them, a dusty red jewel waiting for war. Her team gathered behind her. Hayes, Imani, and the surviving Europa Raiders, all scarred but unbroken. Hayes crossed his arms. We're outnumbered 3-1. Even with the intel, this is a long shot. Arya gave him a sideways glance. When have we ever played it safe? The battle began with silence. The Zyther fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, a wall of obsidian ships cutting across the void. The Fong loomed at the center, larger than any Earth vessel, its hull glimmering with energy fields. Arya stood on the command deck of the Resolute Dawn, her voice calm but firm. All units, execute Phase 1. Hit the escorts. Draw them out. The first salvo of missiles streaked into space, trailing white fire. Explosions lit the darkness, but the Dominion shields held, their counterfire ripping through UEC lines with brutal precision. Flanking ships, Vector 32. Arya ordered, Hayes, get those bombers in position. The comm crackled with tension. Hayes' voice answered, steady but strained. Copy that. We're moving. The battle raged like a storm. Fighters weaved between laser fire. Station guns thundered from Mars orbit, and the Resolute Dawn took glancing hits that shook its hull. Imani called out from tactical. Their formation is breaking. Escorts moving pursue our decoys. Good. Arya said, bring the Fong into range. Lock all forward batteries. The Fong advanced, its massive energy cannon charging with a blinding glow. The sight made Arya's blood run cold. Brace for impact. A searing beam slashed past the Resolute Dawn, vaporizing a UEC cruiser in seconds. The comms erupted with screams, but Arya forced her focus. Now, she barked. Fire everything we've got. The Resolute Dawn unleashed its arsenal. Torpedoes, plasma rounds, railgun volleys, all slamming into the Fong shields. Sparks and fire lit the void as the alien flagship shuddered under the barrage. Shields at 60%. Imani shouted, but the Fong was relentless. Its cannons roared again, tearing through 2 more UEC ships. Arya gritted her teeth. Imani, bring the decoy drones online, she ordered. Make them think we're retreating. The fleet shifted, falling back in a feigned retreat. The Fong pursued, pushing forward alone, just as Arya had planned. Range locked, Imani said. Arya's voice was cold and precise. Deploy the spike mines. All ships converge on my signal. The mines detonated in a brilliant chain reaction, ripping through the Fong shields. The alien flagship reeled as fire engulfed its hull. Hit them again. Arya roared. Every UEC gun fired at once. The Fong's armor buckled, its engines flaring. For the first time, the Dominion's war machine faltered. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Arya didn't celebrate. She watched the burning Fong drift. Knowing Kareth was still out there. He's not done, she muttered. This is just the first cut. Hayes stepped beside her. But we made them bleed. Arya nodded slowly. And now they'll come for me? Later, in the dim war room, Arya studied the wreckage reports. Victory fell hollow. Dozens of ships were gone, thousands of soldiers dead. But Mars was still standing. Imani approached quietly. The Council saw what we did today. We've just declared ourselves a threat. Arya turned, eyes like fire. Good. Let them see what happens when they come for us. The stars outside the viewport burned cold and distant, scattered like silent witnesses to the war that raged below. Arya Vega stood on the deck of the Resolute Dawn, helmet tucked under her arm, her reflection staring back at her from the reinforced glass. Mars was safe for now, but the Dominion Fong, though crippled, still lurked beyond the asteroid belt, gathering its strength. Admiral Rourke's voice rumbled across the war table. This is our chance to finish it. The Fong's shields are down to 30%. If we hit them before they repair, we can end Kareth and gut the Dominion's command. Arya nodded. Then we strike now. No hesitation. Counselor Voss, patched in via hollow feed, shook her head sharply. You can't be serious. We just barely survived Mars. A direct assault on their flagship is suicide. It's the only way, Arya replied, her voice calm but edged with steel. Kareth isn't retreating. He's regrouping for something bigger. We take him out, or Earth is next. Voss' voice trembled, but she didn't argue further. The decision had already been made. The resolute dawn cut through the void, leading a skeleton fleet of battered ships. Fighters hummed in the hangars, armed with the last of their heavy torpedoes. Arya walked the bay, helmet in hand, scanning the faces of the soldiers who had volunteered for this mission. Every one of them knew the cost. Hayes tightened the straps of his armor, glancing up at her. You really think this will work? It has to, she said simply. If Kareth survives, there's no hiding from what comes next. The approach was silent, the vastness of space swallowing the hum of engines and the unspoken tension of every soldier aboard. The Fong came into view, a wounded giant, its obsidian hull scorched and fractured, but still radiating a terrifying presence. Status? Arya asked, stepping onto the command deck. Enemy activity minimal, Imani reported from tactical. Their shields are weak, but their main batteries are still operational. We'll have to hit hard and fast. Arya's eyes narrowed. Then that's what we do. Launch all fighters. The void erupted in fire as the first wave of UEC fighters streaked toward the Fong. Plasma bolts and missile trails crisscrossed the black, exploding in flashes of light. Arya gripped the console. Focus all fire on their starboard engines. I want them dead in the water. The resolute Dawn's guns roared, pounding the Fong's hull with relentless precision. Sections of alien plating peeled away, exposing raw, glowing conduits beneath. Shields down to 20%. Imani called out, but the Fong retaliated with terrifying force. A blinding beam lashed across the battlefield, slicing a UEC destroyer in half. Damn it, Hayes muttered. We're losing ships. Arya's jaw clenched. We hold the line. This is where it ends. The resolute Dawn closed in, weaving between explosions. Bring us within boarding range. Arya ordered. Rourke, patched in from the cruiser Iron Vow, protested. Vega, you're not seriously thinking of boarding that thing. I am. Arya cut him off. Kareth dies today. I'll see it done myself. Minutes later, Arya stood with Hayes and Imani in the assault bay, weapons primed. The boarding shuttle vibrated beneath their boots, ready to launch. This is it, Arya said, voice carrying across the small squad. We're going into the heart of the beast. We get to Kareth, we cut off the head, and this war shifts. Hayes gave a grim smile. No pressure, huh? Imani loaded a fresh magazine into her rifle. We'll make it count. The shuttle slammed into the Fong's hull with a jarring thud, magnetic clamps sealing it in place. Sparks showered as the cutting torches carved a breach. Go! Arya shouted. They stormed through the opening into the alien flagship's corridors. The interior was a nightmare of black metal and pulsating light, the walls alive with a low hum that vibrated in their bones. Zyther soldiers charged, their guttural war cries echoing through the halls. Plasma fire filled the air. Arya dropped behind cover, returning fire with deadly precision. Push forward, she yelled, driving the team toward the command deck. The deeper they went, the more brutal the resistance became. Imani threw a shock grenade, the concussive blast tearing through a wave of aliens. Hayes panted as they advanced, sweat mixing with the frost on his visor. How many of these bastards are there? Enough to die for Kareth, Arya said, stepping over the smoking remains of another soldier. Finally, they reached the command chamber. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing General Kareth Vok himself. He stood tall, his scaled armor glimmering like molten gold. His eyes burned with cruel intelligence, and the curved blade in his hand shimmered with energy. Human, Kareth said, his voice deep and resonant. You dare defile my ship? Arya stepped forward, Rifle raised. You slaughtered millions. This ends with you. Kareth smiled, a thin, predatory smile. Your species is fragile. A candle flickering against a storm. I will extinguish you myself. The fight was vicious and close. Arya fired, but Kareth moved with inhuman speed, deflecting shots with his blade. He lunged, and she barely rolled aside as the weapon carved a glowing scar into the floor. Hayes and Imani flanked, opening fire, but Kareth swung his weapon, sending a wave of energy that slammed him into the wall. Arya dropped her rifle and drew her combat knife, circling him. You think we'll kneel? We're not built to kneel. Kareth's eyes narrowed. Then you'll die standing. They clashed, steel against energy, sparks flying. Kareth's strength was monstrous, but Arya's movements were sharp, deliberate, fueled by rage and the memory of every life he had taken. He swung and she ducked, driving her blade into the gap under his shoulder plate. Kareth roared, staggering back. This is for San Francisco, she hissed, wrenching the blade free. With final thrust, she buried the knife deep into his chest. Kareth gasped, golden blood spilling onto the floor, and collapsed with a metallic crash. The chamber was silent. Hayes groaned, pulling himself up. Tell me he's dead. Arya wiped her blade, breath ragged. He's dead. Imani looked around the burning chamber. Then let's get the hell out of here, before this whole ship blows. They sprinted back to the shuttle, as alarms screamed across the Fong. Explosions rippled through the corridors as the flagship's reactor overloaded. Move! Arya shouted, shoving Hayes through the hatch just as a shockwave tore through the hull. The shuttle broke free, engines flaring, as the Dominion Fong erupted behind them in a blinding explosion. From the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Arya watched the wreckage drift into the void. For the first time since the war began, she allowed herself a small breath of victory. Hayes stood beside her, bruised but grinning. You really think this is over? Arya shook her head slowly. No, but they'll remember today. They'll remember we fought back. Imani stepped forward, voice low but firm. What now, Captain? Arya looked out at the stars, her jaw set. Now we rebuild. And if the galaxy want to call us dangerous, they'd better be ready to find out how dangerous we can be.